Every Christmas Day, Chief Uche distributes fattened chickens to the villagers, earning their trust and admiration. What the villagers don't know is that the chickens are no ordinary gifts, they are what you might call cursed. Part 3. It was a market day when the stranger arrived in Obiọha. His face was obscured by the wide brim of a weathered hat, and he carried a wooden staff carved with intricate patterns. He didn't buy anything nor linger at any particular stall. Instead, he moved purposefully toward the central square, where the villagers gathered. "Who is that man?" whispered Neka, a trader selling yams, nudging her neighbor. "I don't know, but he walks like someone who knows trouble," the other replied, clutching her wares closer. The stranger stopped in the center of the square and tapped his staff 3 times against the ground. A soft hum seemed to emanate from it, silencing the bustling market. All eyes turned to him. "I am Ease, a traveler who has seen many villages, and I bring news from afar," he began, his voice gravelly but commanding. "I have passed through lands touched by darkness, and your village bears the same marks." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "What do you mean by that?" demanded Nwaifa, a local palm wine tapper. The stranger's gaze swept the gathered villagers. "Your suffering is not isolated. It is a pattern I have seen before. Men with ill-gotten wealth spreading ruin wherever they go." Some villagers gasped, while others exchanged uneasy glances. "What nonsense is this?" Uche, a staunch defender of Chief Uche, shouted. "Who are you to come here and cast shadows over our benefactor's name?" "I speak only of what I have seen," Ease replied calmly. "Your chief was in another village, one now desolate, where whispers of his gifts still haunt the air." The crowd erupted in mixed reactions, some voices raised in agreement, others in anger. "Show proof," Uche demanded. The stranger tapped his staff again, and the soft hum grew louder. "Proof lies not in what I bring but in what you already see. Dreams, sickness, misfortune, these are not mere coincidences." Before anyone could respond, the sky darkened momentarily, as though clouds had gathered unnaturally fast. A cold wind swept through the square, sending shivers down the villagers' spines. "Mark my words," Ease warned. "Your village's salvation lies not in defending the source of its ruin but in seeking the truth. Look deeper, before it is too late." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the crowd in disarray. That night, the village buzzed with speculation. Some dismissed the stranger as a charlatan, while others could not shake the eerie feeling his words had left behind. In the shadows of his hut, Mazi Ugaku sat, his heart heavy. He had hoped the worst was behind them, but now it seemed the darkness was only deepening. In the days that followed Ease's visit, strange symbols began appearing on the walls of homes across Obiọha. The markings were carved in the wood and drawn in ash, intricate spirals and jagged lines that no one could decipher. At first, the villagers thought it was the work of mischievous children, but when the marks appeared on the homes of the sick and the dead, fear spread like wildfire. One evening, Adi summoned Mazi Ugaku to her hut. "The marks are not random," she said gravely. "What are they, then?" he asked, his voice trembling. "They are warnings," she replied. "Signs of Agdub Ikenga's growing influence. His grip on this village tightens with each passing day." "But why now? Why after everything we've tried to do?" "The spirit grows restless," Adi said, her eyes fixed on the flickering flames of her lamp. "He demands more, and until his thirst is quenched, this village will continue to suffer." Meanwhile, the villagers began turning on one another, accusing neighbors of summoning the marks or conspiring with dark forces. At the heart of the chaos, Chief Uche's name was invoked repeatedly, some in defense, others in condemnation. Late one night, Mazi Ugaku heard a knock on his door. He opened it to find Uche and a group of men. "You have brought this curse upon us," Uche accused, pointing an accusatory finger. "Your jealousy of Chief Uche has made you meddle with forces beyond your understanding." "I have done no such thing," Mazi Ugaku protested. "Then explain the marks," another man shouted. "I cannot," Ugaku admitted. "But I beg you to open your eyes and see the truth. These marks, this suffering, it began with the chickens." "Lies!" Uche shouted, and the men surged forward, dragging Mazi Ugaku into the street. The villagers gathered, some pleading for calm while others called for punishment. "Enough!" Adiz appeared, her voice cutting through the chaos. The gods are watching. If you harm this man without cause, you risk their wrath. The crowd hesitated, then slowly dispersed, leaving Mazi Ugaku battered but alive. As Adiz helped him back to his hut, she whispered, "We are running out of time." The following morning, Adiz sent word to a renowned diviner, Bra, known for his ability to commune with the gods and spirits. When he arrived, his presence commanded immediate respect. Draped in white robes adorned with cowrie shells, his piercing eyes seemed to see into the souls of the villagers. The villagers gathered in the central square, curiosity mingling with fear. Mazi Ugaku stood apart, bruised from the previous night but resolute. Adiz flanked the diviner, her face a mask of calm authority. Bra raised his staff, and the crowd fell silent. He began chanting, his voice deep and rhythmic. The air grew heavy, and the faint hum of his staff resonated across the square. Then he spoke. "A shadow darker than the night hangs over Obiọha," he intoned. "It feeds on your fear, your discord, your blindness." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. "The gods have revealed a prophecy," he continued. "A reckoning will come, but it will not spare the guilty or the innocent. Unless the pact with Igbo is severed, this village will fall into ruin." The crowd erupted into murmurs. Uche stepped forward, his face a mask of skepticism. "And who is behind this pact, diviner? Speak plainly." Bra's eyes narrowed. "The answer is already among you, but you are blind to it. There is one in this village aiding the shadow, whether knowingly or not. Until you open your hearts and minds, the truth will remain hidden." "Enough riddles," Uche shouted. "If you cannot name the guilty, then you waste our time." "The gods do not answer to impatience," Bra said, his voice sharp. "But heed my warning, the one you defend may yet destroy you." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the villagers in a state of confusion and unease. That night, the tension in the village reached a boiling point. Friends turned against friends, and families quarreled. The prophecy had cast suspicion over everyone, and the once tight-knit community fractured further. In her hut, Adiz and Mazi Ugaku sat in silence. "We must act," Ugaku said finally. "The diviner's words will only deepen the chaos if we do nothing." Adiz nodded, her gaze distant. "The truth will reveal itself, but it will demand a sacrifice." The next day, Mazi Ugaku returned to his farm to check on his livestock. As he tended to his goats, his foot struck something buried in the dirt near an old storage shed. Curious, he knelt and began digging. He unearthed a small wooden box, its surface intricately carved with patterns he didn't recognize. Opening it cautiously, he found a weathered diary inside. The pages were brittle, but the ink was still legible. The diary belonged to Onyekachi, a servant who had once worked closely with Chief Uche. It detailed strange rituals, whispered conversations, and the sudden appearance of wealth in Chief Uche's household. One entry chilled Ugaku to the bone. "They call it Igbo, the spirit of power and vengeance. The master speaks to it in the dead of night, offering the souls of the innocent in exchange for his riches. I fear for my life, for I know too much." Ugaku clutched the diary tightly, his mind racing. This was the proof he needed. But would the villagers believe him? That evening, he gathered the elders and presented the diary. "This is madness," Uche said, slamming his hand on the table. "A dead servant's ramblings prove nothing. This servant worked closely with Chief Uche," Ugaku argued. "He saw what we refused to see." "You speak of proof, yet you bring only suspicion," another elder shouted. "Have you no shame, Ugaku? How much longer will you dishonor our benefactor?" Ugaku stood, his voice trembling with anger and desperation. "You refuse to see the truth because it is easier to live in ignorance. But the gods are watching, and their justice will not be kind." The elders dismissed him, their loyalty to Chief Uche unshaken. Defeated, Ugaku returned home, clutching the diary as though it were his only lifeline. The days that followed were marked by chaos. The diary's existence became known, further splitting the village into factions. Some began questioning Chief Uche's generosity, while others fiercely defended him, accusing Mazi Ugaku of trying to usurp Chief Uche's position. In the dead of night, the strange symbols reappeared, this time accompanied by unsettling noises, eerie clucking, and the faint sound of chains dragging across the ground. Panic spread, and the villagers turned on one another. In the village square, a heated confrontation broke out. "Mazi Ugaku is behind this," shouted one villager. "He is jealous of Chief Uche. That diary is a forgery." "No," another countered. "What if he's right? How else do you explain the sickness and the marks?" "Chief Uche gave us everything," Uche said, his voice resolute. "And you would repay him with betrayal." A scuffle broke out, and it was only Adi's intervention that prevented bloodshed. "Enough," she yelled. "You are playing into the hands of the shadow that seeks to destroy us. If we do not stand together, we will all perish." Her words quelled the immediate violence, but the divisions remained. That night, Adi's and Mazi Ugaku sat by the fire, their spirits weary. "The village is tearing itself apart," Ugaku said. "A storm is coming," Adi's replied. "And when it breaks, the truth will be laid bare for all to see. But whether they accept it is another matter." As the firelight danced in their eyes, the village of Obiọha seemed poised on the edge of a precipice, its fate hanging in the balance. What happened next? Find out in Part 4. The final part.